Have you ever wondered how rockets really work? Probably not, but I'm going to tell you anyway, to the extent of a freshman at least. So, first, how do you even build a rocket? Step 1. You need an extremely large factory. Should be pretty easy to get from like Temu or something. Step 2. Find some aerospace grade aluminum lithium alloys, a parachute, and heat shields on the side of the road. Should be pretty easy. Step 3. Find rocket engines with just a couple million pounds of rust on Sheen, or maybe Etsy if you have some trouble. Step 4. Assemble all this stuff, and you'll have a rocket. Obviously, it's not this easy, and if you try to make a rocket on your own, it'd blow up and vaporize you. So that means, Step 5. Start a space program of engineers and rocket scientists. After you've started your own space program and built a rocket, you probably want to get to space. If you want to get to space, you could just go straight up, but that would be useless as you'll run out of fuel once you get there and nosedive straight back down. Instead, you'll want to do a gravity turn. This is increasing your angle as you get higher. This will save fuel and put you to an orbit. I mean, if you do it right. Once you are in orbit, you have a couple options of what you can do. You could, of course, float endlessly in Earth's orbit until you run out of supplies and die. You can land back on Earth using orbit as a tool, or you can use orbit as a tool to land on the moon or other planets.
Look at the bigger
19
picture.
years of flight to the sun? Nah, I'm gonna invent something that's gonna make it 9 minutes.
Let's say you want to land back on Earth. You'll need to fire your engines retrograde, which will lower your periapsis into the Earth's atmosphere. In simple terms, this means you'll need to turn your rocket the opposite way it is traveling, and fire engines for a certain amount of time, which will change where the lowest point of orbit is on Earth. Well, what if I want to go to the moon? First, you'll need to calculate a translunar injection to do this. You'll need to fire engines prograde at the correct point until your apogee is approximately 384,000 kilometers to intersect with the moon's path. After making it to the orbit and you start approaching the moon, fire engines retrograde to slow down and allow the moon's gravity to catch you into its lunar orbit. Keep making small retrograde burns until you lower your elliptical orbit into a circular orbit close to the surface. To land, you'll need to turn vertically and fire your engines to slow down until you reach the surface. Simple, right? To simplify this, basically you want to fire engines the way you are traveling in orbit, which if calculated right will extend your orbit to the moon's path. After making it to the moon's orbit, you want to turn your rocket the way you aren't traveling and fire your engines to slow yourself down and get caught by moon's orbit. Once you make it to that orbit, you can adjust it by firing your engines the way you aren't moving until you move the orbit to a shape that will allow you to land. When you're landing, you want to keep your rocket vertical so that you can fire engines to slow yourself down so you don't become an artificial asteroid. If you want to travel to other planets, you basically do all of that again, but find a transfer point for that planet's orbit. The transfer point is where you move from one orbit to another. To return to Earth, you calculate Earth's transfer point and make your way to it. If you fail any of the steps, you'll probably die and get sent flying into deep space, or both, so drive safely. And what did two countries do with that knowledge?
Throughout the 1950s to the 1970s, the Soviet Union and the United States of America wanted to see who could cause more lawsuits hundreds of miles above sea level in an event known as the Space Race. Smack dab in the middle of the Cold War when tensions were already high, someone had to be better than the other in this little conquered zone known as outer space. This beef started on July 29, 1955, when the USA announced that they would be launching some satellites for some reason. 5 days later, the USSR announced that they would be launching their own satellite, and the space race started. Although the USA started this battle, the USSR would be first to huck waste into the air with the first successful launch, the Sputnik 1. What the heck is a Sputnik? The Soviets were quick to the bullet, however, and set a few more firsts, like sending the first human into space in 1961. The US was falling behind, and they needed a way to rebound from getting 200 pumped by the Soviets. So, on May 25, 1961, former President John F. Kennedy told Congress that he doesn't just want a man in space, but a man on the moon. I guess.
Well, I don't think that thing could have gone any worse.
The Soyuz 1 was a USSR spacecraft which became infamous for being the first in-flight spaceflight fatality. launched on April 24th, 1967, Vladimir Komarov already knew that there were way too many problems with the spacecraft to be a successful launch. After an emergency re-entry, shocker that happened, the primary parachute failed and the other two tangled around each other like a botched WWE fight. Komarov cursed the engineers and flight staff right before his death. Well, at least the Soviets got off the frickin' ground. A few months before that, the Apollo 1 was set to be the first attempt to make it to the moon, but unfortunately during a ground test, an electrical spark lit up the spacecraft, causing the entire crew's death. Rest in peace to them, as well as Komarov. After the failure of those two missions, the US and USSR had to improve their rockets if they really wanted to land on the moon, and this led to the now famous Apollo 11. The Apollo 11 was the first spacecraft to not just land on the moon, but come back safely. Led by Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins, people turning into the TV got a glimpse at what a man on the moon looked like. I guess. And as we watched these goobers play golf on the funny giant rock, we were all wondering, what would happen next? The Soviets focused less on landing on the moon after the US had already done it, and instead focused on landing rovers onto Venus, the moon, and Mars. In 1971, the Soviets' Mars 2 successfully landed on Mars. Successfully crashed. But Mars 3 was able to land, but was only able to transmit data for 14 seconds, so I don't think that was a success. In the final years of the USSR, they focused on a low-orbit modular space station known as Mir, and at the time, it was the largest spacecraft in orbit until the International Space Station at least. And then finally, in 1991, the USSR space program fell with the USSR, marking the end of the space race for good. So who won? I don't know. I feel like the winner of the space race is a lot closer than people think. Although the US got the first man on the moon, the USSR also had some major achievements as well. But if you were to ask me, I would tell you that the USSR won the battle, but the United States won the war. And in conclusion, I see the USSR on more globes than I do not, which is a win for them.